from the way that I understand it, you guys pitched Mark Zuckerberg in person back when he only had 200 employees on letting advertisers on Facebook. And he was like, no, we don't want that. We don't want advertisers on Facebook.
So I met him at, I think, the second F8, which is the Facebook Developer Conference. And it was very early. He had opened up the platform for developers, and we were taking an approach to onboard brands. And so small company, they were in Palo Alto, got some time with him. And let's just say he wasn't that interested in advertisers. He was interested in growing the network, in going from the number 3 or 4 social network to number 1. And so the answer wasn't bad. It was like, yeah, just go do your brand thing. Just go do what you need to do. But he clearly wasn't focused. This is pre-Cheryl, so they really hadn't brought in a business person to really productize this very early social network.
What was it like going in there and seeing these early offices? And I mean, it wasn't the number 1 social network at the time. And being like, yeah, you should like.
It was just a startup.
I think advertising will be big.
It was a special startup. It was one that we. Yeah, I mean, we'd been around startups. So this was a startup in Palo Alto, second floor of, just a Main Street building. And there was an excitement, and we thought it was going to be big. That's why we dedicated our life and our business to kind of Facebook social networking at the time. And it was kind of the good old days of social media, where a lot of optimism, and we hadn't really impacted mental health or democracy yet. And so it turned out not the way we'd expected, with the impact of the world, 4 billion people on one company's platform. But like any startup ecosystem, it was super exciting. And the smartest people that we knew were working for this company called Facebook. The Facebook, not even Facebook, it was the Facebook.
Wow. So you made, was it the first Facebook media buying agency? Is that what Buddy Media was? It was like the first, I guess, social media buying agency?
Kass, you want to take that?
Yeah. What Buddy Media was a platform. So we were a software company that allowed big brands to reach their customers on Facebook. So we became the management tools, how big brands were able across the world, multiple languages with, different privacy settings, you name it, across your teams, they could reach their customers on Facebook.
What platforms were you on before Facebook? Or did it start with Facebook? It
started with Facebook.
Wow.
We were Facebook's, power tools for Facebook.
And what was interesting at the time is it was the first time that you had one global platform that served people everywhere. So if you think about Unilever, one of our customers, they have 100 brands. They do business in over 100 languages in every country in the world, but maybe 3 or 4 that are sanctioned, right? And we're talking about Dove soap and ice cream and all these kind of CPG.
Yeah.
And so if someone comes into the page from Florida speaking Spanish, you get a totally different message than someone who comes in to, Facebook from Colombia speaking English, right? And so you could target content by location, by language, by interests, by friend group. And so we provided the software to let you first publish your content. And then after the content was out there, kind of open up the ad, the targeting groups to actually run ads against that content. So it's a brand new way to market. And we just thought it was a better way because birds of a feather flock together. And if you can reach the friends of your customers, they're much more likely to buy your product than just, fishing in the dark.
It was a way better way than what was conventionally done. I think I remember you telling me on the phone too, like when you talked to Mark, you were like, if you have anyone who expresses interest in advertising on Facebook, send them our way and we'll get them set up so that there's like a higher ad spend. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the business. I mean,
Pretty
the business
much.
model was getting really close to Facebook, and they were focused on their platform. We were focused on onboarding advertisers. So the relationship was, as companies came to Facebook, often they would say, go get it set up on Buddy Media. And, that's the software you're going to use for all your paid, owned, and earned media on Facebook. And then from there, they could start spending advertising. So company ads. So companies like P&G and Unilever and Ford and, all these global brands, they needed to get set up with this new way of advertising before they could start spending money. And we were a key part of that ecosystem early on.
Was that your biggest acquisition channel? Or was it like Facebook just sending you customers and clients?
Pretty much.
I would say yes. And also, between Mike and Jeff, our other co-founder, who are just powerhouse salespeople and had just amazing relationship skills, it was probably those two different streams of business.
So going out and meeting people too.
Yes, big time.
Then there was
and doing events, right?
Oh, yeah?
So we took over a ton of different events. Even when we had small marketing budgets, it was about getting thought leadership opportunities for Mike and Jeff, and then owning anything we could that was inexpensive. When you're a startup, you have no budget, right? So how could we own an event? And some of the key things we did were, if we could go to a conference where we knew a lot of people were, and own like the bag drop at every hotel door, right? So we would put our branding on the bag that everyone would walk around with, or we'd own the coffee cups. And then we'd, sandwich it into Mike speaking or Jeff speaking, and then do a huge client dinner.
If somebody listening wanted to do a partnership like that with an event, how would they do it?
So if you wanted to do an event like that, like a partnership where you could figure it out, you've got to be persistent. I think one of the things that my team did well in marketing is you just didn't take no for an answer. You were negotiating nonstop. So you weren't just buying 2 seats to a conference. You were negotiating 2 seats, a speaking opportunity, the bag drop, coffee cups. Could you provide food? We even did really inexpensive like chocolates that had our logo on it, so that everybody would get to their room. They're hungry after 8 hours at a conference or an event, and they open up a candy bar and it had our logo on it, or it said, Facebook Power Tools, right? So it's about trying to get your brand in front of as many different opportunities as you can, even if it's small opportunities. The number of opportunities you can do is better than often just owning one thing.
How would you find and contact the event organizers?
They're pretty much, when you go to register for any event, they'll always give you who's in charge. And then you've just got to be persistent to get to the person who's actually making the decisions.
So
you just got to keep calling.
This was during registration, so this wasn't far in advance of an event.
Oh no, it's definitely far in advance.
Okay,
I mean, you were talking 6 to 12 months out. And we would plan, my rule of thumb with marketing, even for startups, is you'd have an 18-month, calendar somewhere in the office that showed every single thing that you were trying to do, including PR. The other big thing about us, I think, which is how we punched up a lot, is one of the first, I think, 15 employees was a head of PR, which is unheard of at a startup.
Super unheard of. What was that person doing?
They were trying to get as many speaking opportunities for Mike as possible. And we were trying to get Mike to comment on social media, right? This emerging dominant market that was happening and taking over everyone's lives, and getting him any opportunity to comment. I mean, Mike, were you on CNN or MSNBC once? You were commenting CNBC. You were everywhere.
Yeah, so we believe in not just digital marketing, but kind of owning a market. And what that means is when you go to an event, you go big. You don't just go as an attendee or like an exhibitor. It means thought leadership. Companies want to work with innovative companies that have a vision for the future. It means, putting out tons of content, even more so today. So content is the honey that will attract people, and it's building relationships with reporters, or influencers in today's world. So I spent a lot of my time in New York City just having lunch or tea or coffee with people like Julia Borston from CNBC and saying, this is where the world's going. This is what's happening in Facebook marketing. And so by the time they put together lists of the most innovative companies or need a source for a story, they're calling you. And so you become part of the ecosystem. It's not transactional. You're always providing value. You're providing information, thought leadership. You're inviting people to your events, dinners. We're doing a big podcast at South by Southwest this year, Masters of Scale, which is Reid Hoffman's podcast. We're doing a live, taping of that. And we'll be inviting, media and influencers and people. So it's looking at it as a relationship that hopefully you're providing opportunity to learn, to get something out of it. And Kass just did an incredible job of, up-leveling our marketing with very little money. Like, we weren't spending a lot of money. We were just doing a lot with the money we spent.
But bam, this is the craziest digital marketing strategy and nobody knows about it. What if you could reach people when they most want to use or purchase your product? When they're most cash in hand, like Fry in Futurama, clutching a wad of bills. Literally every second, somebody's going to Google or ChatGPT searching for a solution to their problems. These are potential customers. They know what problem they're trying to solve, but they don't know the brands that can take care of their problem. They're not trying to learn, they're trying to convert. I just came out with an SEO program that shows how to target these people directly. It's how to get your brand in front of potential customers when they need it most. It shows how to do this with or without a website. You can use social video or forums too. How to do this with very few backlinks. How to do this with very few words per page, so not a lot of effort. It's SEO, search engine optimization, so you don't have to spend any money on ads. The program itself is videos, templates, and step-by-step breakdowns. It's getting customers, people who are using it, it's getting them insane results. Seriously, it's wild. Compact Keywords, I spent the last 11 months making this. You can get it at compactkeywords.com. Back to the podcast. All right, so I have a question. When now that I have a lot of followers, or I guess influence, I have a lot of people hitting me up trying to get my time and
Right.
and have some of my time. So I from what I understand, you both were doing that in the early days of Buddy Media. How do you get somebody to say yes when you message them? Because they're getting so many messages.
Mike's brilliant with this. I'll let you answer that one, Mike.
So, I look at people as people, and it's all about relationships. And so very rarely do I call someone up and just say, I need this. Even today, right? We've done, a lot of stuff around, the book that's coming out. And I don't call people and say, oh, buy the book, right? It's how can we create content that kind of melts people's faces, right? How can we do stuff that is so valuable to your network that you're going to love it? And so I think back to relationships that I built, like with Scott Galloway, who had a company called L2. And L2 was basically a think tank for luxury marketers, Louis Vuitton and Coach and all these CMOs from these companies. They needed to figure out Facebook. Scott didn't know that much about it. He was a professor, still is a professor at NYU. It was at NYU. And so I spent a lot of time just giving. Here's the Facebook platform. Here's what you can do with it. Here's why it matters. I didn't stand up and say, buy Buddy Media, right? And so I forget who said this quote, but there's this quote of figure out why you're different, figure out why you're unique, and exploit that for the benefit of the world. So what do you bring to the world that no one else brings to the world? And how do you exploit the shit out of that to people's benefit? Right? Not extracting value, but benefiting others. And everything we do, we look at it like that. So even before coming on the show, we really got to the essence of what your listeners care about, what you care about. And we're coming prepared with kind of our strategies, our tactics of how we operate, how we market, how we grow businesses. And if you show up and you haven't done your homework, anyone with influence will turn you off. If someone shows up to a meeting and doesn't know who we are, given how public we are, like game over. Like you don't care enough to spend 2 minutes, right?
There are too many people like that who don't really prepare or who put in sloppy, careless work.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see it all the time. Oh my gosh, I had so many questions there. How did you meet Scott? Scott's awesome.
He is awesome.
Well, Scott, you know, if you cut up open our arms, it's the same blood. It's entrepreneurial blood. He'd started a company called Red Envelope. He had L2. We had a lot of the same customers when he was doing L2, and we were at VaynerMedia. First time we met, he came into our office. We immediately hit it off. He also is no bullshit. Really was hustling, and we were both in New York City, and we were both much younger. And, you know, we built businesses together. It's, you know, it's why, you know, he's on the back cover of the book. He's, you know, we've done a lot of stuff together. And it's just relationships, right? I just spoke to, you know, I was messaging with Ryan Holiday, the Daily Stoic.
I talk about him all the time in the show. Yeah. I mean,
well, that's why I mentioned him. And so
trust me, I'm lying. Changed my life. That's awesome.
Hey, the guy's amazing, but go back before he was the Ryan Holiday we love. And we had lunch in Soho because he was trying to figure out his life. So a mutual friend made the intro, and I was thinking about writing a book, which we never wrote at the time. He was thinking about his business. And, you know, when I reconnected with him, you know, because he's a book guy, right, about our book, he immediately went back to that lunch and kind of the value that I provided him. And
sorry to interrupt you.
Me.
Did he so he messaged you? Was it when he was director of marketing at American Apparel, or was he still like very junior at the time?
Well, he was junior, but this is 2011. And so he had gone out on his own. He was writing books. He was helping other people. Our mutual friend, James Altucher, who was an investor in VaynerMedia and a good friend of ours, made the introduction. But that's not a relationship that I can show up just taking, even at the time, right? It's like when you leave someone, or send a message, it's, did that make that person's life better or worse? Like, did you add value or did you take value?
Exactly.
And as marketers, you have to think about that, right, Kass? Like, that's what you're always saying.
Yeah, big time. I mean, it's whether you wasted their time or are you giving something back that they can actually help with. I mean, that's what I say the whole purpose of this book that we decided to write, 12, 13 years after we sold VaynerMedia. People keep saying, like, why now? It's because I think we've lived our life in service of others. And this next 50 years of our life, we want to see if we can impact as many entrepreneurs as we can with the cheat codes that we know have worked over and over again, and help, each entrepreneur not fall into the same, traps and landmines that we have over the years.
The book is called Shoveling Shit, right?
It's called Shoveling Shit, a love story about the entrepreneur's messy path to success.
What's a cheat code in it? What's like one of your favorite ones?
One of my favorite ones, I would say that it's about developing the cult in your culture. That's really what I was known for, is trying to create an environment where everyone is rowing at the same speed, in the same direction, with mostly smiles on their face. So you kind of realize that, like, when you spell the first 4 letters of culture, it's cult, right? Usually has a negative connotation. But I always thought, like, if I could create a good cult, a positive cult, I could create an environment that when we had to pivot, people would still be okay, right? They wouldn't jump ship. They wouldn't panic, because startups, you're going to pivot 4 or 5 times. It's almost an anomaly if you have one business model when you start and you end up with that business model at the end, right? So I think that's a cheat code, is you have to worry about culture. Even in this remote world, you have to figure it out. Actually,
literally this morning, I made a video about Tim Westergren, the founder of Pandora. and his story about how they launched in 2000 with $2 million in funding. And I think by 2001, they had burnt it all. They spent it all.
Yeah.
And so every 2 weeks, he had to pitch his employees to dip into their savings. And because Pandora had this legendary mission, and he had to give this speech every 2 weeks. And it took 2 weeks. And then I think they raised, I don't remember, I think it was like a $7 or $9 million Series B. I think that's what it was. And then that day, he paid everyone back what they were owed. But that is a story. That's old school founder mode. Everyone's talking about founder mode now. That's old school founder mode.
Right. Absolutely.
Did you guys have a lot of employees at the beginning, or were you really like a scrappy startup?
We had, I think when we started, there were about 4 of us. We got to about 10 to 15. When did we move into the bigger office on Broadway, Mike? I think we had probably 30 employees, 30 or 40. So we were growing, but in I think it was 2009 and 10, we grew about 100 employees.
Wow.
And that's a lot. And I think another cheat code is you've got to incentivize your current employees to recruit their friends, right? Birds of a feather, as Mike said earlier. No employee who's having a good time, right, is going to be like, oh, don't come over here. Or, you have to start to trust that the people that you have employed in the beginning become your anchors of culture, and that they will start to attract other people into your network.
Yeah, it's the culture and the people around you is so important. Because are you both from New York?
No, we're both from outside of DC.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and how long have you lived in New York City for?
Since 2006, January 2006.
All right. So you guys are New Yorkers. I'm like born and raised in New York. And the network that I built in New York is crazy. Like I used to work, I've talked about this sometimes in the show. I used to work at New York City nightclubs, and someone that I met, and we would go out together every night for 2 years. And then I think in 2013, he left to go live on Tony Hsieh's Airstream Village in Nevada. And one day he was doing mushrooms, and he was listening, I think it was 2013, but one day he was doing mushrooms, and he was listening to this podcast about Bitcoin. And there was this guest on the podcast, this kid with a weird name, Vitalik Buterin. And this guy Vitalik, he's like, yeah, I have this vision for a decentralized computer. And my friend was hallucinating the same thing on mushrooms. And so I think Vitalik was in Oregon, and my friend drove to go meet Vitalik, and he became head of global community at Ethereum when it launched. So he's a co-founder of Ethereum. And I met him like working in nightclubs in New York. And I have so many stories like this, and so many people in my life, like crazy people in my life, just like this, from just being in New York and being active in New York and going to events in New York. But something that I think about, and I'd love your opinions on this, but it's kind of a hard question. If you're not from a major hub like New York or Miami or San Francisco or Los Angeles, if you were, I don't know, in the middle of Europe, or if you were in India, how would you create connections from there? What would you do? And I understand it's a harder question.
Well, we did this. I mean, we grew up
Mike.
in the industry. We grew up in Chicago, right? I went to Northwestern. Kass moved to Chicago to be with me when I was 22 years old. And it was as close to kind of middle of nowhere in tech as anyone. There was 1 or 2 VCs. And so what we did at the time was you got to get on planes. You've got to own your local market. So even though it may not be huge, who are your people? And I think back to those early times, and a lot of businesses have come out of there. You look at Groupon, and some huge businesses that came out of Chicago over time. The other thing is we didn't have this technology. The most interesting thing that we had at the time was Skype, right? But no one would use it really for business calls until 2010. And those conferences, I used to go to conferences. I used to show up in cities, or before I'd go, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be in town, would love to come by, say hi. and let you know what I'm up to and see how I can help grow your business. And it's just working harder. However, it's not impossible. We've done deals, like we have a Nigerian company, and the founders, it's last mile delivery. The founders found a way to get to the States, computer science at MIT, no network, and just outworked all of their competitors, called Metro African Express, Max. And so if entrepreneurs can do it from Nigeria at a time when there's no startup community, when they started about, I think, 8 years ago, just don't use that as an excuse, right? Like, winners win, and everyone else just explains away why they lost.
I like that. Yeah. And honestly, like, it's so easy now. Someone in anywhere could just start making videos every day, and then eventually they'll get good at making videos. Maybe it'll take a year, maybe it'll take a year and a half, maybe it'll take 2 years. And then they'll start getting followers from all over the world. And then they can just message these followers. Like, if I wanted to talk to any one of my followers, any one of my 300,000 followers, I could just DM them and they'll be like, sure, I'll jump on a call with you, because like I see you every day in my feed, in my FYP. And I think anybody could do this. It might take time to develop that skill of making good videos or making good posts on X or on Threads or whatever it is. But yeah, I like it. Anybody could do it. Also, I like the insight of like owning the market that you're in. And because like if you own the market that you're in or the niche that you're in, people will know you and they will push other people to meet you. They will vouch for you so hard.
That's right. And then you appear bigger than you really are, right? So even when we were in Chicago doing golf.com, and like Mike said, there just wasn't a lot of tech. There weren't any tech companies there, very few. They knew us, right? They knew that we were the golf company, right? And that helped to create doors that would just open because people wanted to talk to us about it. Not to mention that a lot of people are, golf fanatics.
So I wanted to ask about that. So you guys have crazy accomplishments. You founded golf.com, early investors or angel investors in Liquid Death. Gary Vaynerchuk started VaynerMedia from your conference room. There's so many different things to get into. Your advisors to Meta. Oh, actually, okay. No, I wanted to ask this earlier on and I forgot. Do you have any thoughts on what's going to happen with TikTok?
Yeah, I think that, once the train has left the station, it's very hard to push them down and to put the train back in the station. A majority of Americans want TikTok, and it will survive in some form. Under the current administration, it's probably a Chinese company forever. I don't see a sale happening personally, but the idea that this platform that is beloved by US citizens is going away, things don't work like that. Like Uber survived all the regulation because consumers wanted Uber. It was a better experience. And TikTok is a global platform that has competition, that has to continue to innovate. And it's not in their interest to mess it up, right? So is it owned by Chinese? Yes. It is in their interest to be a global player and abide by the global rules. So do I see this company just poof, gone? Of course not. It may go down once or twice like we saw, which seemed to be more of a PR stunt than anything.
Yeah.
But it's hard to put these back in the bottle once they've been released into the world.
Do you think it'll stay owned and operated by ByteDance?
I think it'll be owned and operated by an entity that's not American. I think it's very hard to force sales. I can't think of any other example of, a foreign company that we forced it to sell to a US entity. And so we're in a listen, nothing's going to surprise me, right? Like the last few years has been a series of, wait, what the fuck just happened, right? Like, wait, what happened? So like nothing would surprise me. Nothing can surprise us. We're in a post-surprising world. If people are like, I can't believe that happened, I'm like, yeah, of course it happened. Of course you can believe it. What in the past 10 years has happened that you think is rational? Like COVID, that was crazy. Like the 16 election, the 20 election, the 24 election, the insurrectionists, which are now like running free, like, and this isn't a political statement. It's just like LA burned down, right? Like things are happening in the world, crazy things, faster and faster. And so people who say, I can't believe it, I'm like, where have you been the last 10 years?
Yeah, you're totally right. I wanted your thoughts on TikTok because a bunch of creators listen to this show. A lot of people with big followings. I mean, myself, like I've been making videos on TikTok every day since November 1st, 2022. So I was curious your thoughts, also given just your involvement with huge social media companies. But you reminded me of something that I think about all the time, and especially now. It's like every day is way too entertaining. There's way too much opportunity to get distracted. Actually, so I was listening to, I think it was Gary in Mexico City. It was like a recent talk that he gave in Mexico City, Gary Vaynerchuk. And he's like, yeah, I don't really watch other people's content much. And I'm like, yeah, because there's too much opportunity to get distracted and to lose focus. And
That's
like you said, like you need to have crazy output nowadays.
right. And I think with entrepreneurs, especially, they lose focus pretty easily, right? And you've got to make it the number one thing that you do, right? Focus, focus, focus. What are the priorities? What's going to take you from 0 to 1, right? And nothing else matters. Like literally nothing else matters.
Yeah, for me, like listeners to the show will know that like this is episode 566 of like me doing this in a row without missing a day.
So cool.
Yeah. And I think the daily videos starting on November 1st, I guess it's been like 813 days in a row for that without like even when I say this all the time, even when I was visiting my ex-girlfriend in Barcelona and we both got the neurovirus, which is like the worst virus ever, I still got out a video on that day because consistency is like, it's just like, whatever happens in a day, I'm not going to miss a post. It is like my North Star, the most important thing for me.
Discipline.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
You're an entrepreneur. Like you are shoveling shit every day. And what you're describing is what we're writing about, which is the greatest entrepreneurs learn to love the shit they have to shovel, even if they have Ebola and can barely talk, right? Even if they're with I don't know why you're visiting an ex-girlfriend, but
she was my girlfriend at the time. That now she's an ex-girlfriend.
Oh yeah, okay. It sounds like really that's a sign that it was a good breakup that if you got. But it's an entrepreneur with a shovel and who loves the shovel is unstoppable. And like if Edward can create a global brand on the back of social, I would argue anyone can. If Gary Vaynerchuk at 34 years old with no money, yeah, like it takes like the working hard, working smart. But when Gary showed up, people don't realize he was 34, no money. His dad hadn't given him any equity in his business. He couldn't even get an office. That's why he showed up. He didn't like us. He liked our real estate for our small little company.
I would argue he also liked us, Mike.
Well, eventually he did, but he was just looking for real estate. Like, let's not kid ourselves.
I think he was also looking for the entrepreneurial like camaraderie that would happen. There's not a lot of people who understand the struggle, right? Other entrepreneurs do, right? They get it. They understand the focus and discipline that's needed. When he showed up, I have Mike pull me in. He's like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what's up? And I'm thinking, oh, okay, something bad's happening. He's like, listen, so I might have kind of given our only conference room to Gary. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what? He's like, Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
That's amazing. And he started VaynerMedia, which is now at 3,000 employees from that conference room.
Yeah, he and AJ.
He filled it up fast. He went from him and AJ and a few buddies to like 30 people in the fire department kicked him out because it was a fire hazard.
Wow. I wanted to ask about golf.com because I was for a while I was advising Connell Barrett, who is a senior editor there in Brookfield Place. I think that's what it was, Brookfield Place. Yeah. And you guys founded golf.com?
Yeah. So we started off in 1998, September of 98. I had this idea that recreational golfers needed a place to track their handicaps online because, as you know, like if you're not, wealthy and belong to a private country club, you had to go back to the same public course to actually enter your scores, which was kind of not what recreational golfers did. You went all over the place. So I also liked to track all of my different stats, like fairways hit, greens hit, and regulation. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had a way to like lock this up online? And Mike, of course, with his visionary brain said, you know what, why don't we create the content and syndicate it to the world's top sites? And so that kind of started the whole business. And that we launched in September of 1998 and sold it in January 2006.
Wow. So was it a blog? Is that what it was?
No, it was actually, we had a platform of golf
software
content.
company?
Yeah, of golf content. And we syndicated the content to other big sites like USA Today Online. Everybody wanted golf content. This was the height of Tiger Woods and Phil. And, without Tiger, I don't think our company would have really taken off and been successful. But, here comes this incredible new exciting player that's young and beating everyone by 16 strokes at the Masters. And we kind of rode his wave. And it was hard because in 98, we were, creating this content and syndicating it. And by December of 99, we were sold to a company called chipshot.com. And they built custom golf clubs out of Silicon, Valley. And their promise to us was, here, we're going to do an all-stock deal. And this is in December. And then by April, we're going public. Sequoia's backing us. Our board was super excited. We were thinking, holy cow, we own 80% of this company. This is incredible. We've been in business a year. And the next thing you know, they call us and tell us that Sequoia is backed out. They no longer have money and they're going bankrupt and taking us, with them into bankruptcy.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I was, so this is way before I was advising them with SEO, and I believe it was 2015 or 16. And yeah, I think it was part of Time Inc. So I was going to the Time Inc. offices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mike was there too for a good year, I think, right? In 2006 to 7.
When Time Warner existed as a company. Who would have guessed that the Edward Sturm show would have outlasted Time Warner, but you have. So congrats.
Thank you. No, that's insane. So you were full time with that company. It was your baby.
Yeah. Yeah, we
spent a year there, and it was a great year, and it just showed me I never wanted to work for a company again. And right after I left, Facebook launched their platform on the day our daughter was born, our third kid, and Kass was giving birth the way she gives birth, C-sectionally through a very narrow birth canal.
You have to stop saying that. You say that on every single, opportunity.
Well, everyone knows it, so I just want to remind them. And she came back from this successful delivery, and I said, I got the next company. It's going to be on Facebook. She said, what's Facebook?
No, you actually said, guess what? Here I am being rolled into the recovery room, really not feeling well, but you're kind of handed a child and you're like, take care of it. And he goes, guess what? And I thought, as I always do, he's going to get me food, right? He's going to get me all the food that I haven't eaten in 10 months. And he goes, I know what we're going to do next. I'm like, go home, get the other 2 kids over to the hospital. Like, what's up? He's like, no, I know exactly what we're going to do for business next.
Were you hyped? Were you like, I want to eat?
I was like, oh, please stop. Just I got to rest. And like, please get me a slice of pizza when you can. Yeah.
So wait, this was but this was when
May 24th, 2007.
Wow. And you said what had Facebook launched? It was their ad platform?
No, so that day was the first F8 developer conference, and Zuck got on stage and launched the Facebook platform for the first time, which meant that any developer could build apps that use the social graph to make them better, right? So you had a gaming company, and like, the game space, like games with friends are better than games against a computer. And so Mark Pincus launched Zynga. He's one of our investors, and he went and kind of launched a social game. Scopely, one of our, seed investments, it sold last year for, $5 billion of cash. That company had a vision that games were the new social network, and they launched on the back of Facebook. We took more of the marketing approach because it kind of just suited who we were, and we were off and running, but it all started that day. That was the first day that Facebook said developers can integrate their apps with our social graph. And I would argue it was the most important decision that they ever made, because you had the world's developers replatforming around people, and Facebook became the default social graph, which it still is today.
It was amazing insight that you had.
Yes, big time. He has a lot of those ideas.
And for people who don't know, Buddy Media sold to Salesforce for $800 million. I should have said that earlier. Yeah, so you guys sold your company for 800M.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind of almost 5 years. So it was like 4.5 years of really hard work, but massive growth, just massive, because of this incredible new industry of social media. So it was like a rocket ship.
I don't know if you can talk about this, but maybe you can. Because maybe it was long enough ago that you can, but I love negotiation stories. Was it like a long negotiation? Was it just like an easy thing?
It was a very
crazy?
Very short negotiating. There was something in the air at the time. And this is probably like March, April, May of 2012.
March.
Yeah, March.
Yeah, it's March 2012.
I'd met the Salesforce people. I was in conversations with Google and Yahoo, and I get a message from Ryan Ate, who is at the time, corp dev at Salesforce, a very close friend of ours even today. Him and John Samorjai, who runs Salesforce Ventures, said, Mark would like to sit down with you, which, at the time, Salesforce wasn't as big as it is today, but it was still the cloud computing company. And when the CEO founder, who is my idol, he wrote a book, Beyond the Cloud, which we kind of based Buddy Media on. He kind of gave his whole playbook. I hopped on a plane and, I went to his house, and he actually had, the way it's set up, he had two houses that backed up against to each other in Pacific Palisades in San Francisco. And I went to the house that is like his office and where the philanthropy efforts were, and sat down at the dining room table. He just worked out. He grabbed a power bar, and, I was drinking water. He was drinking water. Neither of us drink a lot. And he just said, just show me. Like, don't pitch me, just show me the software. So I pulled up the software, and what I'd done is I'd been running a campaign to see who the most handsome Salesforce executive was on Salesforce. And so I knew that at some point I'd be able to bring this demo out where I'd publish content to a page, and then I was running these ads, and I showed him how we publish content, how we can moderate conversations, how you could target it in different parts of the country, how you could take the content that's working well and buy ads against it to amplify it. And the part that he loved was I brought out a map, and I just took out the cursor and I drew like a circle over an area. And I'm like, that's where we're going to target to. So you didn't have to know like zip codes. You just kind of could select the area of the country. I put in a bunch of psychographics from the platform. And Mark is like me, that when you get excited, you can't hide it. He's like, holy shit, like that's so cool. It's like that. Wait, do that again. And so it was just like two entrepreneurs who were like showing each other what they got. And he said, I want to do the deal. I'm going to overpay for your business. I don't want you to shop it around. And he mentioned a number, and I was like, you know, it was like way too high. But I was like, just put your best foot forward, because it's going to be a competitive thing. Even though in my head, I'm doing like happy dances, right? Like it's like the best meeting of my life. And he went to his board and, you know, he got it done. And then a week later, Facebook goes public and the stock loses 50% of its value. And so I'm like, oh, this dude's going to pull out of this deal. Like, we're tied to Facebook. Facebook's down 50%. The balloon has popped, just like April of 2000 with the dot-com crash. He calls me, he says, we have a deal. I want you. I want your company. You have nothing to worry about. The first of many times that he did the right thing. And he is just a great guy who's driven by this idea that, like, just do the right thing.
Right.
Don't look at the contract. Don't like overthink it. What's the right thing to do at this moment? And I've taken that with me ever since. I'm not saying I didn't do it beforehand, but I hadn't thought of it like that. Just do the right thing. And so I had a great run, 4 years at Salesforce. Whether it was worth 800 million, who knows? Like, it was a different time. It was a deal that they did to get them into the marketing world. It was a great price. We thought we were going public as one of the fastest growing companies, fastest to 50 million of annual recurring revenue, I think, of any company ever, like 3 years from starting that. And Salesforce is just a one-of-a-kind company. And Mark Benioff is an entrepreneur unlike any we've seen, who doesn't have a lot of the mishigas that we're seeing from some of the others that were on stage at the inauguration.
Well,
He's
I
a
will
family
also
guy
say
who loves his team and has built an incredible culture.
And he also has done this amazing job at giving back, right? Which was one of our ethos, one of our mission statements, that Buddy Media was about giving back. We did every activity as a team. We always had some kind of philanthropic effort that we did, right? Whether it was making, I think it was something insane, like 5,000 sandwiches for homeless shelter at one of our all hands meeting, to, you know, the ridiculous number of Toys for Tots that we did, to making shoes, things like that. And he fit right in that. Or we fit right into his belief in that as well. He's a very charitable guy. And it just felt like the right
It's why we
fit.
did the deal. I mean, we had an offer on the table, you know, that I could talk about now, that was $100 million more from Google, like a written offer ready to go. And it turns out that if we'd negotiated, they were willing to go significantly higher. I heard $2 billion from someone who was in the meeting with the CEO at the time, Eric Schmidt, who said, listen, if you want this asset, go get it. Whether you pay $1 billion or $2 billion, who cares? Like, if it's strategic. $2 billion would have been a different conversation. I love Mark, but who are we kidding? But we really wanted to be a part of Salesforce and thought it was the best place. Being a Facebook management system owned by Google at the time, who had Google Social and had social app like aspirations, it just seemed very like not us, like too incongruous to really, you know, get our heads around. But it was a lot of money, so maybe we should have done that.
So wait. So Mark Benioff is like, yeah, 800M, and Google had offered 900 or no?
They hadn't offered it, but we ran into.
It came in the same day or a day later, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And you just shot them. You're just like, nah, I already said yes to Mark.
Well, you have fiduciary obligations to your investors. So all this is like in discussions with the board. At the time, Google had a lot of heat from Washington. They bought like the Sabre system, which was a travel booking engine. And every deal they were doing was taking at least a year to get through government approvals because of monopoly concerns. They already had dominant share of like digital advertising. This would have given them even more because we had 9 out of the top 10 global brands spending money through our platform. And we thought that it was going to go into a year, maybe 2-year review and potentially get rejected. And so then we're thinking like that limbo is going to put our business in jeopardy and it's going to drive us crazy.
The focus
and so
would
Mark,
be lost.
it was a $16 billion business. Salesforce had nothing in marketing. There was no claims to anti-competitive behavior. And we optimized for a quick close. And by August of that year, we had money in the bank. I had a new job as like heading up strategy for the marketing business. And we're off and running. And if I had to do it over today, I would do the same deal. Whether Mark would do it, you could call him. But, we all do deals that we do in order to grow our business. We'd made 3 acquisitions. All those acquisitions made a boatload of cash as part of the deal. Whatever, you do your deals and you move forward.
So how long after you sold did you start angel investing? Because you're an angel investor in some crazy companies.
We'd already
started in like 2010, 11.
And what were some of the most exciting companies that you got involved with?
Facebook, like way pre-IPO,
Tumblr.
like being able to invest in Facebook, Tumblr. What were the early ones? Scopely. We did that time.
For sure.
BuzzFeed, which didn't turn out as great, but was
for a while, but then
company.
then tanked. AppBoy.
Yeah, Braze. So we
Braze,
received
which is
investors in
Braze right now.
which is a $6 billion public company today. We love entrepreneurs. So, those are the ones we did that were great. Happy to talk about the, 30 we did that were fucking shit sandwiches. So it's like, you got to do a lot of them to like learn and figure out what works. And at the end of the day, it's the entrepreneurs who love to shovel shit and who are focused doing the right things every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. Those are the ones that win over time. There's no shortcut. Like there's no being Edward and not doing videos every day, right? Like you can't expect success without the inputs.
I think there's a ton to learn. So you guys have seen so many successful businesses and failed businesses. And as much as there is to learn with successes, there's like a ton to learn with failures. And so what are some like just super obvious red flags for both of you?
I think mine would come down to due diligence, right? I think back about the golf.com deal, the first one with ChipShot, and we were pretty naive, young. I mean, Mike, how old were you? Like 23, 24?
If that. 22.
And we had thought we had done our due diligence, right? Like we hired a law firm and everything, and it's the .com boom. But I think back then there was something that I thought just didn't feel real about the deal. It just felt, I don't know, just something I can look back and I remember the feeling. And now I think it's about trusting your gut. But due diligence has become something I like doing now. Let's just say that.
This is with companies that you both are investing in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I feel like perhaps I didn't check the box well enough on due diligence with ChipShot because obviously Sequoia backed out, right? And they didn't give us the correct cash position at the time. So that pulled us into bankruptcy, right? After a year of working our asses off. And I think going forward, I took that lesson and those red flags and made this kind of a hobby of mine when we're doing investing, is to really make sure that we have checked every single box, especially when it comes to the leadership team. You know, you can look at founders and they might have an expertise in the product or sales or whatever it is. But to me, it's really about, can they surround themselves with people who fill in their gap? And are they willing to hire those people? And we find a lot of deals where we will just say no because someone is just way too, let's just say they have a big ego and think they can figure it all out. And we love entrepreneurs who know what they don't know.
Yeah, that's great. And it's really important to be surrounded with just people who can fill in your gaps.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
And not be intimidated by it.
You have a lot of stories of successful entrepreneurs in shoveling shit.
We do.
What are some like super exciting stories in the book?
I think you
so
can
we have
talk
some
about
great ones and some, you know, the whole point about this book is it's not a glorification. It's raw, and it's about this imbalanced life of the entrepreneur. And so we talk about early liquid death because as tech investors, people thought we were crazy. You're investing in a water company, right? Like, how will this ever be anything? And we talk about Gary, right? And why he succeeded, not just his success, but the focus he brought to it. We talk about Walter Driver at Scopely and how he thought games were going social and how he answered what we call the go gauge of, like, you know, how we decide to greenlight ideas and entrepreneurs should decide to greenlight ideas. And then we talk about the mental health crisis among entrepreneurs, because as we are building even a couple that has each other, it's lonely, it's full of kind of heightened emotions. So if you have a tendency to be depressed, you'll be much more depressed. And I talk about Tony Hsieh, who you mentioned earlier, and his mission in life was to create happiness. And on many levels, he succeeded. And last time I saw him, we went to a Vegas Golden Knights hockey game, which was one of his favorite things to do, in his bus. And he seemed amazing, right? Behind the scenes, the toll that the downtown project he was building and friends who were just taking from him without any sort of guardrails was taking on his business. No one really knew. I wasn't close enough with him to see it, but you know, people who I know who were inside that knew it. And that, I can't speculate what happened, but it's pretty much well known that he was struggling with his own mind. And a lot of, just like musicians have very complicated minds, so do entrepreneurs. You got to be a little crazy to do what we do.
Super
and you also
crazy.
have
to do what you're doing, Edward, like it's not for everyone. Like, let's just admit that, right? And so we outlined strategies that we think have helped us maintain sanity as we built the businesses, the family. We have 3 kids and we've had 3 dogs or 4 dogs together. Like, how do you do it without losing your soul and losing your mental health? That's a big part of the book.
Kass, you were saying something?
I was saying that the other part about entrepreneurs, and I wonder if you feel this way too, is when you're on a mission and you're focusing, because those entrepreneurs who have that discipline of focus, you can only do one thing well at a time, right? So one of the things I think Mike and I accepted very early on is there was going to be impact, there were going to be consequences, and there were going to be losses, right? And some of those losses are friendships, missed opportunities with friends and family. And I think what we did well was going into this last company at Buddy Media going, okay, we know what we're sacrificing. It's going to suck and it's going to feel really lonely. Like watching all of our kids' friends go on vacations together and we never had a vacation, right? Sitting there and saying no to every invite that good friends invite you to, or family invites you to, and having to explain, that away why you're doing something and disappoint people, right? You have to be okay when you're an entrepreneur in disappointing someone, because it's going to happen a lot. And so we talk about this in the book, that you have to be ready to make those sacrifices, and guilt is not your friend, right? So, if you want to focus and you want to win, you got to do one thing really well at a time, even if that comes at a consequence to others.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I talk about avoiding shiny object syndrome all the time on this show because, it's a mistake that I made for a long time. It's a mistake that lots of my friends made. I think it's the most, I would bet that it is the most common mistake in entrepreneurship is shiny object syndrome. And something that I say is no one is so stupid that if they just stuck with something for 5 to 10 years, they wouldn't figure it out. I just so genuinely believe that if somebody stuck with someone for 5 to 10 years, instead of bouncing around to every little opportunity, quote unquote opportunity, thinking the grass was always greener, like if they just stuck to one thing, they would eventually, they would make enough mistakes.
They'd be an expert in it.
Yeah.
They'd be an expert in it.
Yeah.
They would win. That's right.
Yeah.
It's a big part of our book. A big part is just how do you focus yourself in an organization? And that's the difference between Gary. Gary, his focus was getting customers and hiring people to fulfill the social media marketing for those customers. That was his whole focus.
That was it.
You would ask him out to dinner, you'd do something, he'd be like, no, I'm focused. That's what I'm doing.
Tell him about one time when he asked you to dinner, what time of night that was.
Well, he still does it. And we're actually having dinner with Gary tonight. But I'd get these messages from Gary. It's like, hey, Laz, love you. Haven't seen you in a while. Let's have dinner. Great. You're much busier. Just name the time. He's like, okay, 11:30 on Sunday night. Right? Because in his mind, that is a slot. That is a slot where he can fill up his cup by meeting with friends and just jamming, right? Now, that's a slot where I'm asleep now. But that mentality of if it's important, make time, put it on the schedule no matter what,
right,
is a really important one. And so, what's cool about what we're doing is all of the stuff that we use to grow businesses. When you buy just one copy of the book for $30, you get the entrepreneur toolkit, which is how to focus. Here are all the budgets. So here's a budget template that we use. So It's not for business school people. It's for idiots like us who went to journalism school. Here's your revenue you think, here's your expenses.
Where did you go to school? I went to Emerson in Boston.
I am great school. I went to Northwestern Journalism, Medill School of Journalism.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Which seems like a weird thing to do now, go to journalism school, but whatever. It's the only way I could get in. And so it's just it's working hard,
it's
practical, you said, and sticking with it. But there's so many resources. Work smart. Someone who comes in not knowing how to do a budget, dude, there's ChatGPT now. Just say I need a budget for a services company, that has 10 people and wants to grow 10% a year, starting with $1 million in the first year. It's done for you. Don't be resourceful. And if you ask someone a question, I don't ask people questions unless that's the only person I can get the information from.
Really?
Yeah. Why would I pick your, people are I want to pick your brain. I'm
we learned that from Roger Ehrenberg. You remember that, Mike? He hates it.
Go do your own work. My brain doesn't need to be picked. Kass picks it all day, every day. And vice versa. So it's kind of this mentality of self-reliance.
It's people wanting validation. Because I get that a lot.
I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
I think you're right on that. They want to shoot the shit. They might not know exactly what they want the validation on, but they want to feel better about themselves. And Mike's right. When you're an entrepreneur, you better be very careful about all your asks, right? What are you actually asking? Because you have one shot, right, with each person to make that connection real. And like Mike says, you got to be ready to give something back.
All right, so I have a question.
Smart, Edward. You're smart.
Well, you
Like,
guys
you're
are
really
very
smart.
kind.
Like,
You
I
guys are
never
very
thought
kind.
about, oh, it's an emotional thing. It's not like a knowledge thing.
Well, I know that because I made that mistake myself. Like, I came from a situation where I wanted validation from everybody, and so I would do the same thing. I would email people
That's
and
interesting.
send people letters to hear from them, just so I could tell my friends, "Oh my gosh, I heard from this person!" Like, and it would
Right.
give me validation because I mean, I made that mistake. But so, how much more likely do you think both of you are to actually respond to somebody if they ask a tangible question that you are an expert in? Versus, I want to pick your brain.
Oh, much more likely. I mean, big time. I get these emails almost every day, right? The pick your brain ones, I'm just so delete, right? But if they ask a very specific question and come, and say, look, I get this a lot from either kids in college or business school, I would like to understand the following. Here's my background and here's why I'm in. Right? I mean, I come from a place of service, though. I want to help as many people as I can. Right?
And it's so obvious how to bring value. Like, someone wrote me last week after they bought 50 books through our website and said, I'd love to ask you a question about my business, and I think that you'll have good insight. So here's a person who spent $1,500 on us. Right now, we're donating it all to Cycle for Survival. So it's not like, but he knew how to get our attention, how to win our hearts. And I'm going to give him an hour of my time just because, like, he gets it, right? And so, and I think back to that Gary meeting, his pitch was like, I'm going to do the services. You have the software. We'll also be able to work together. It wasn't just like, give me a conference room, right? And so find out what makes someone tick. And right now, selling books makes us tick. Like, we're kind of whores, right? Buy our book and we're your best friend. And so it's so easy to find that. I have someone who I'm trying to get in touch with who will not respond to me. Right? Now, let's just say I now have the big ass calendar on my door, and I've started
Jesse.
running, and I do saunas, and I live close to you. So Jesse Isler will eventually reach back out to me and talk to me, but I'm okay for now. I'm just trying to provide value to his life, even though he doesn't even know it.
Why do you want to talk to Jesse so bad?
I love him. I think he's great. He works with his wife. I like his ideas. I like how raw he is. I think if we got together, we'd be able to create some just crazy content. We both believe in giving back, and we have overlapping philanthropic. So, I don't have anything I want to, obviously he could help sell a lot of books, but I'm not going to lead with that. I think if he reads the book, he'll realize that shoveling shit is his life, and he'll be like, oh shit, this book is like my kind of book, right?
And I also think that,
but whatever, and if he doesn't respond, who cares? He has a life. I don't judge him.
I think there's a lot of similarities too when you work with your spouse, or your spouse is also an entrepreneur. So I think it'd be really cool to just shoot the shit with them. And
I love that he's selling $50 big fucking ass calendars. Like what? Like what? like what a great entrepreneur. Like, I'm just gonna put a bunch of dates that everyone knows on a piece of paper, sell for $50. God bless him. A lot easier than like selling airplane fractionals like he used to do.
I liked what he said about that calendar on My First Million. I listened to that.
Having said that, I love it. I'm addicted to it. It's the first thing I look at every day. Anything that I do, like, I put it up there. If it's not on big ass calendar, it doesn't exist.
For me, it's just my Google Calendar, which is just across all of my devices and alerts me several hours in advance, multiple times. Like, I need that to stay organized
constantly, right?
Yeah,
Me too.
Yeah, I need that. How did both of you meet? It's amazing. So you both have been married for a long time. You've had 3 kids together, done multiple successful businesses together. Are you both from the same area in around DC?
Kind of. I mean, DC is surrounded obviously by Virginia and Maryland. So he's from the Maryland side. I'm from the Northern Virginia side. And I grew up with his older brother. So I'm his brother's age. And Mike's a couple of years younger than I am. And we grew up kind of in the same circle of friends, although he was younger. And we met up at a mutual friend's wedding when we were both in our 20s and got smitten and then started dating. And that was really it. But I kind of grew up in his house. So that's kind of a neat little background tidbit about us. And I grew up, I was a, nationally ranked college tennis player. And all I was doing was, practicing and talk about discipline. I miss most of all of our fun hangouts. But after I was done, I would go over in my sweats or in my tennis gear and hang out with his brother and all of our friends. And they had the best food, right? Because they had a big family. And my parents, I was the last kid, right? So they were done. They were like checked out. But their house had the best food. I could open the refrigerator and just eat and eat and eat. And it was awesome. So that's what I would do on Friday or Saturday nights.
Wow. I was nationally ranked in squash.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think there's something about competitive people.
Oh, yeah. Mike would probably say, well, people say, are you as competitive as Gary? I think we are. I think Gary and I could literally dominate a lot of things if we got together as a team.
Yo, actually, I would love to talk about this for a second because my competitiveness is borderline unhealthy, and I need to keep reminding myself that don't compare yourself to other people.
Well, that you can't do, what do they say? The comparison is the thief of joy, right? So you can't do it that way. But I will say I use my competitiveness for good. So when people say to me, you're so competitive, I see you out there on the pickleball court or wherever you're doing golf, tennis, whatever it is. And I use that in business to box other, companies out. That's how I turn it, right? To make it a superpower. But I don't think Mike and I are about necessarily thinking about external validation and things like that.
What do you mean you use it to box other companies out?
So in the beginning, whenever you start a company, how do you make yourself bigger, right? How do you make people perceive you, right? That's what marketing is. It's just perception. Perception's reality. How do you make people think you're bigger? They're bigger than you are. And so my whole thing was, I grew up playing basketball. My dad was a big basketball player. Box people out under the boards. And, you really have to say, okay, I'm not letting this player in this space. They're not going to get any bandwidth of any PR or anything because I'm going to be out there hustling and getting our name out.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I look at people who are just I'm going to make more videos than them.
Yeah, exactly.
Be more consistent.
You're going to hustle. You're going to do what you do, your expertise better than everyone else. And you're going to be disciplined and focused about it.
Yeah. But I have
Edward,
to do it.
I actually have to run. It's 10:15 and I've got to get to the next meeting that I have. Mike, I don't know if you have extra time.
I have one more question, actually.
Okay.
And I think it's a good question to end on. So both of you are now making content every day. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your handles, by the way? Where can people find you before I ask the question?
First, go to, on Instagram, you can find us at Kass and Mike, right? Just pretty simple, Kass and Mike. But Mike's always at Lazerow and I'm at Kass Lazerow. And if you want to buy our book or learn more about us, go to shovelingshit.com. And, content, making
content. And it's
content is hard to do.
And we're suffering,
as you
but
know,
learning to love it.
And we're learning something new, right? Here we are coming from building a company during the social media days, right? And I'm learning how to create content on social media, which is just so ironic. It doesn't,
that's my question. My question is, because both of you are, I don't know if it's both of you, but you're advisors to Meta. Before our last call, I was like, oh yeah, did you hear about generative AI on IG? And you're like, yes, I just texted Adam, the CEO of Instagram, about it, literally before this call. So, you're deep in there with all the stakeholders, with tons of huge social media companies. And I don't know if you were making organic content before, like social posts or video, but you are now. And so what's it like to go, I guess, on the outside to actually making the content? And are you bringing that ideas to the companies that you're advising as well, or just like what's it like? What are the insights that you're having?
I think for us the impetus is for us to again help as many entrepreneurs as we can, or I should say, and it's very uncomfortable, as Mike said. It's hard making content, and it's hard not worrying about like, did this make sense? Did this look right? But there's also this whole technical aspect of it, of, how people consume content on different platforms and what's their attention span and what's the good hooks. I've actually enjoyed it because it's learning more about marketing, right? Because I always love that side of things. But it is a lot to do. It's a full-time job, if not multiple full-time jobs of people. But we're doing it. We're uncomfortably doing it in hopes that we can help more entrepreneurs.
How many videos are you putting out a day? Is it videos or is it images and videos?
It's usually video content, 2 videos a day, and 6.5 days a week. I think on the weekends we go down to 1 just so that we can take a little bit of a break.
Are you making the videos yourself? Do you have an editor?
It depends on who's doing it. We do have an editor, but there are often times that Mike will be in his office late and cut stuff up.
I went to journalism school, so I love telling stories. And when Kass and I worked together, we really never worked together. She ran the companies, I did sales and, raise money and product. This is us working very closely together, which has been a challenge. And we've learned about each other. And,
it's new. We're in the same lane
and we're
for
having
the first
fun.
time.
And I think it took we've only been doing it for like 6 or 7 months, but it took a month or two to like let down the guard. And we had to come to the realization that we can just be ourselves. There's no one else we can be. And let's just be our true selves. We don't have to share things that, we don't want to share. Though I would encourage you all to check out our OnlyFans page. All of that stuff is there.
Okay, Mike, that is so not appropriate.
But it's, we're now in the flow that is taking time, but feels good. And we feel like the content has gotten better because we're just being ourselves. And so we're not doing it just for the book. We're going to be doing this for the next 50 years. And so although we may only have like total, 100 and some thousand across all the platforms, ask us in 50 years. And that'll be
kind of what you said earlier, Edward, right? Do something long enough and you become an expert in it.
Yeah, you figure it out. One last question. Do you think social video is like it's here to stay for the next, let's say, 4 years, or do you think there's going to be a dramatic shift in the type of content people are consuming?
We're just starting.
Yeah.
Like social, people who grew up with social are now becoming, the dominant players in the workforce. And we haven't seen video really take off on LinkedIn like it will. There will be more platforms. Like what we've learned over 30 years in tech is that things always evolve. We saw the internet, we saw social media, we saw crypto and the age of digital ownership, AI, and things are it's getting easier to create great content and easier to put it out there. What's going to be harder, which is why we're kind of working so hard, is it's going to be harder to lock down distribution. In a world of filter failure, breaking through will be really hard. And so we should have been doing this 10 years ago. We were a little burned out. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. We're not doing it now. And
I read about
there's
TikTok.
No time but today.
I read about TikTok when I was living in Belarus in 2019. And I'm like, yeah, okay, gotta go. Thank you both for being here. Check out Mike and Kass on socials and get their book, Shoveling Shit.
Shoveling
and everything's going to be linked to in the description for this episode. Everyone, this is episode 566 of my daily digital marketing show.
Amazing.
566 days in a row. Thank you all for watching and listening. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.